Welcome to another episode of Demystifying Dallas, 1963. In this episode, we change course a bit and talk about an online course that I'm trying to structure around the investigations into the Kennedy assassination. This would be something of what they call a MOOC, M-O-O-C. You may have heard of MOOCs before. Massive Open Online Courses. These are free courses that are sometimes offered by Harvard, Yale, many other institutions. And you can't get credit for the course, but you do get a certificate for completing it. And you can listen to lectures by some of the greatest minds in whatever specialty course is being taught at that time in that particular MOOC. MOOCs have fallen out of fashion in academia, but it seems to me that it's a good way to introduce college students, especially younger college students, to controversies like this one, to teach them much of what they need to know and what is not really available in too many other places, especially in popular culture. So it seems like a good idea, and I've talked this over with Bert Griffin, who was an assistant counsel on the Warren Commission in 1963-64, and he thinks it's a good idea too. The idea being that we would have a course online which anybody in the country could sign up for, and most of the materials in the course would be materials written by, me, among other people. They would be what are called lectures, but they're not the kind of lectures we associate with college. They're very short because bite-sized chunks of material go down better in the online age than traditional lectures. So we would not have traditional lectures, but we would have videos that were of the YouTube variety, YouTube length, on various subjects. And we would have these written so-called lectures that are really only a page or two that help us transition from one subject to another. But in this video, I want to talk about the outline I have in mind for such a course. At least I want to start talking about the outline. I won't go over the entire outline in this episode, but you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about as we go through it. And I really would like your opinion on the way this should go, the way this should flow. And if you can comment with your suggestions, that will be very helpful. Because it's nice to think that this could be a crowdsourced course in which people would pitch in their best ideas about what to talk about in a course about the investigations into the Kennedy assassination. If you believe in conspiracy theories, I have to say, you will not be getting a hearing because it's not a course that proclaims the probability or even possibility of a conspiracy. It is, in fact, a course that lays out the evidence that has always been out there or has accumulated over the years, but that has not gotten down to the level of the American people. And that is the thing we're trying to correct. We're not trying to indoctrinate anybody. We're not trying to say you should not read other materials, but we're just saying you should consider these materials as well. And we have, and that has led us to the conclusions we reach in this course. And so we will have very important people who will be part of this course in terms of interviews and such. But we will also have different perspectives, just like any course has. And we will make sure that it is a course that's robust. Obviously, it will have exams, but they may be discussions that are not moderated, but that allow people to discuss things back and forth with one another. And there will be multiple choice exams, which simply help people learn some basic facts that are not in dispute. So here is the structure of the course that we have in mind. Unit 1 would be about the assassination. it would talk about the things we know happened in the course of the assassination, from roughly Kennedy's arrival in Dallas, the motorcade, Oswald's escape, his eventual arrest, and the weekend interrogations, and everything that happened within that time frame. The things we know and the evidence we accumulated. So that's Unit 1. Unit 2 would be the first investigation, which would be, of course, the Warren Commission. Unit 3 would be about the Zapruder film, from investigation to memory. Now, the Zapruder film can be exaggerated as an item of evidence, and I think it has been, but it is unquestionable that it is an important item of evidence, and it is even more important in our cultural memory of the Kennedy assassination. But we include that as an investigatory document as well as an icon of cultural memory. Fourth, the politics of conspiracy. Obviously, within months of the publication of the Warren Commission, people were debating whether or not there was a conspiracy in the assassination. And this began mostly in an ideological way, with people on the far left believing that there was a right-wing conspiracy to kill Kennedy and then to cover it up and blame a communist like Oswald. So ideological motives began the conspiracizing of the Kennedy assassination. And then, of course, some of the defects in the Warren Commission investigation, which were largely not the Warren Commission's fault, caused some people to question the whole investigation and to start spreading rumors of conspiracy. Fifth, we'll look at the second investigation, the House Select Committee, which did its work from 1975 through 1979. And, of course, that investigation, for most of its course, tended to reinforce the conclusions of the Warren Commission. But in the very last stages of that investigation, the House Committee decided to endorse the idea of a conspiracy. And we'll talk about that and the reasons for that. That endorsement did not exactly hold up in the 1980s, and we'll discuss that as well. Six, we'll talk about building a reasoned consensus. And here I'm talking about the private investigators. What does that mean, the private investigators? Well, they weren't professional private investigators. They were self-appointed private investigators. These are the people who became extremely interested and got themselves contracts or connections that allowed them to write important books on the assassination. And we will talk to some extent about conspiracy writers, but we're also going to be talking about the findings of investigators who basically found the Warren Commission to be correct in most of its judgments. People like Gerald Posner, people like Gary Mack of the Texas School Book Depository, who started out as a conspiracist and ultimately came to the conclusion that Oswald shot Kennedy alone. And we'll talk about other writers who have reached the same conclusion, investigators like Max Holland and Dale Myers, all of whom made some very important contributions to the investigations in the 1980s and 90s. And we call this building a reasoned consensus because the consensus was, and yes, one man acting alone killed President Kennedy. Again, this is a course that lays out the evidence of a single gunman. We don't ignore the evidence that conspiracists have presented, because we believe by discussing that evidence we can show students the gaps and the holes in the evidence and the mistaken conclusions that flow from those things. Now again, this is for college students. We expect to have a document that serves as a kind of textbook for this course, but it's not a textbook in the usual sense. By textbook, I'm speaking rather metaphorically And it will really be a documentary film. And the documentary film we have in mind is by a fine documentary filmmaker named Tom Quaight. Now, we have not made any decisions or negotiations with Todd Quaight, although he is aware of this project. And the idea being, this documentary, which is about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, might be excerpted down to, say, an hour and a half. That would be an ideal length for a college student who's perhaps a freshman or a sophomore. Students could always watch the entire documentary, the full version. And by the way, the full version is available as a rental on Amazon Prime. And so anyone who's interested in this subject, I highly advise that you take a look at the Todd Quaight documentary. Truth is the Only Client is the title of the documentary. And this documentary basically dovetails with the interpretation and the structure of the course that we have in mind. So the first part of the course would focus on first evidence, what happened during the assassination and what evidence was assembled during the assassination. This will focus on the organization of the commission with generalizations about the roles of the commissioners and their staff members, and the evidence collected by Dallas police and the FBI, bullet fragments and shells, the rifle and its provenance, fingerprint evidence, Oswald's movements before and after the assassination, the Zapruder film, and evidence collected for the commission about Jack Ruby. This portion will present the findings of the commission on each of these matters, which are confined to the questions the commission concluded from analyzing evidence that it knew about at the outset of its investigation. We want to historicize the investigation. We want to put it in the context of its times. We don't want to expect the members of the Warren Commission to have been aware of things that only became known decades later. We want to be able to ask the question and answer the question, what could the members of the Warren Commission have asked, given what was possible and what they should have known and could have known? And in that way, I think we restore a sense of historical rationality to the analysis of the Warren Commission's work. The second part of the course will be the uncovering and analyzing of new evidence. This will be the actual investigation that the Warren Commission conducted from January to September 1964. And, of course, that will be the unfolding of the Warren Commission, and that will be the assessment of the Warren Commission's work. The Warren Commission was unable to answer certain questions, and among the most serious, of course, were questions involving Castro's Cuba, because the CIA withheld information from the Warren Commission. And the Warren Commission didn't ask for the information because it didn't know that the CIA had this information. But it's still an omission by the Commission. And that omission alone would have made it necessary to have another investigation, even if that was the only thing that was withheld from the Warren Commission, which it was not, because the FBI also withheld information. So a second investigation was definitely necessary, and we'll look at that later in the course. But those are the first 2 units in the proposed course. And I and others who are interested in this project would be very interested in your opinion. And so please comment on these ideas and propose suggestions of your own that would make this a better and stronger course. We're always interested in ideas. We'll take them seriously. We'll consider them under advisement. But first we have to hear from you. And so I hope you respond with alacrity to this invitation. For now, bye-bye.